I spent 7 years climbing to that position. 7 years of sleeping less, drinking more coffee, and believing loyalty would buy me stability. But when the $500 million contract was just hours from being signed, they fired me. Their mistake was forgetting about the clause I'd written myself into the agreement, the key personnel clause. They thought they could discard me like yesterday's newspaper. They didn't realize I was the linchpin holding their entire deal together. My name is Rebecca Hale, and until 3 hours ago, I was the Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Westbridge Partners, 34 years old, born in a Rust Belt town in Ohio where the biggest employer was a steel mill that closed when I was 12. My father worked double shifts at a warehouse after that. My mother cleaned offices at night. They taught me that hard work was the only currency that mattered in America. I believed them. The Denver skyline stretched before me through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our 32nd floor office. Westbridge occupied the top 5 floors of the Meridian Tower. All glass and steel and aggressive ambition. I'd earned my corner office through 7 years of 80-hour weeks, missed birthdays, and relationships that withered from neglect. My view faced the Rocky Mountains, their peaks catching the October morning light like promises waiting to be broken. I remember checking my watch, 8:47 a.m. In less than 4 hours, representatives from North Point Resources would arrive to sign the contract that would define Westbridge's next decade. $500 million for a comprehensive restructuring of their North American operations. It was the kind of deal that got written up in the Wall Street Journal, the kind that turned senior VPs into executive partners. I was the architect of this deal. Every clause, every provision, every carefully negotiated term bore my fingerprints. For 18 months, I'd cultivated the relationship with North Point, flying to Houston twice a month, learning the names of their executives' children, understanding their corporate culture better than most of their own employees. When their CFO, Madeline Cruz, insisted on a key personnel clause, a provision that would allow them to terminate the contract if certain essential Westbridge personnel were removed from the project. I'd drafted it myself, never imagining it would become my weapon. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. A habit from my scholarship days at Northwestern, where I'd learned to function on caffeine and determination alone. First in my family to attend college, first to wear a suit that cost more than my father's monthly salary. First to navigate boardrooms where million-dollar decisions were made between golf stories. My assistant knocked. 2 quick raps that I'd learned to recognize. "They want you in conference room A," she said, her voice carrying an unusual tension. Sarah had been with me for 3 years. She knew my moods, my rhythms. The worry in her eyes should have been my first warning. Conference room A was the killing floor. The place where careers went to die. Not the grand boardroom where we'd be signing with North Point, but a windowless box with harsh fluorescent lighting and chairs designed to be uncomfortable. The kind of room where HR delivered bad news. Ethan Ward was already there when I arrived. His Armani suit impeccable as always. His smile sharp enough to draw blood. 41 years old, Harvard MBA. And the kind of casual cruelty that passed for leadership in certain circles. He'd transferred from the New York office 6 months ago, officially as Executive Vice President of Operations. But everyone knew he was gunning for the managing partner position when Richardson retired next year. "Rebecca," he said, gesturing to a chair like he owned the room. Like he owned me. "We need to discuss your future with Westbridge." The folder on the table between us was thin. Termination packets always were. After 7 years, my entire career could be reduced to a few sheets of paper and a non-disclosure agreement. 4 hours before North Point, I said, keeping my voice steady. "You're really doing this now?" His smile widened. "The timing is unfortunate, but the decision has been made. Your conduct has become incompatible with Westbridge's values." Incompatible. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. I'd generated $40 million in revenue last year alone. I'd built relationships that opened doors competitors couldn't even find. But I'd also questioned Ethan's judgment in front of the board last month, challenged his projections, exposed the flaws in his analysis. In his world, Competence was acceptable, but defiance was not. The North Point deal, I started. We'll proceed without you, he interrupted. I'll be taking personal oversight of the account. That's when I understood. This wasn't about my performance or any fabricated conduct issue. This was about $500 million and who would get the credit. Ethan wanted my triumph as his coronation. He pushed the folder toward me. Clear your office within the hour. Security will escort you out. I stood, my legs steadier than I'd expected. 7 years of my life dissolved in a 10-minute conversation. But as I reached the door, I turned back. Ethan, I said, allowing myself a small smile. You might want to review Section 47B of the North Point contract, the key personnel clause. I believe you'll find my name listed quite prominently. The confusion that flickered across his face was worth every sleepless night I'd ever spent in this building. Security arrived within minutes, 2 men in navy blazers who clearly knew the drill. The younger one, barely out of college, couldn't meet my eyes. The older one, Rodriguez, had escorted out at least a dozen employees in my time here. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Ms. Inhale, Rodriguez said quietly, we need to go to your office. The walk through the cubicle farm felt like a funeral procession. Conversations died mid-sentence. Keyboards went silent. Everyone knew what security escorts meant. I kept my head high, shoulders back, the same posture my mother had taught me for walking past the welfare office when I was 8. Dignity was free, she'd said. Sometimes it was all you had. My office, former office, still smelled like the lavender candle I'd lit that morning. Sarah stood by my desk, a banker's box already in her hands, tears threatening to spill. This is bullshit, she whispered as Rodriguez checked his watch. 15 minutes, he said, not unkindly. I pulled out my phone first, scrolling through contacts, downloading what I could. The company laptop stayed, that was Westbridge property. But my handwritten notebooks, filled with 18 months of North Point meeting notes, those went into the box. The photo of my parents at my graduation. The crystal paperweight Madeline Cruz had given me after we'd closed North Point's preliminary agreement. The bottle of champagne I'd been saving for this afternoon's signing, still wrapped in silver ribbon. Rebecca, Sarah's voice was urgent. Ethan's already sending emails to the team. He's saying you had a difference in vision with leadership. He's scheduling a prep meeting for North Point at 10 o'clock, 2 hours before the signing. Ethan would walk into that boardroom, shake hands with executives who trusted me, and pretend he'd been the architect all along. The thought made my stomach turn. He doesn't know, does he? Sarah asked, glancing at Rodriguez, then back to me. About the clause? I sealed the box, the tape making a sharp ripping sound in the quiet office. He's about to find out. Rodriguez cleared his throat. Time's up. The elevator ride down felt endless. 32 floors of descent, each one marking another step away from everything I'd built. But with each floor, a cold clarity settled over me. They'd made a tactical error, firing me before the contract was signed. The key personnel clause wouldn't kick in until after signing. But North Point hadn't signed yet. They still had the right to walk away. The lobby of the Meridian Tower was all marble and morning sunlight. My heels clicked against the floor with a finality that echoed in the vast space. Rodriguez walked me to the revolving door, the box heavy in my arms. I'm sorry about this, he said quietly. For what it's worth, everyone knows this is wrong. I stepped into the October morning, the Denver air sharp and thin. My car was in the executive parking garage, a privilege that had probably already been revoked. I stood on the sidewalk, box in my arms, watching the city move around me. Business people hurried past, coffees in hand, phones pressed to ears, living their ordinary Tuesday while mine imploded. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the Houston area code. Rebecca, Ethan Ward just called to confirm you'll be at the signing. Something feels off. Please call me Madeline Cruz, CFO of North Point Resources. The woman who'd insisted on the key personnel clause because, in her words, I don't do business with companies, I do business with people I trust. I stood there on the sidewalk, box at my feet, and considered my options. I could walk away, find another firm, pretend the last 7 years had been a learning experience. Take the high road, as my mother would say. Be professional. Be gracious in defeat. Or I could make them pay. Another text from Madeline. Just heard from a contact at Westbridge. Is it true? Did they let you go? The news was already spreading. In our incestuous industry, secrets had a half-life of about 30 minutes. By lunch, every competing firm would know Rebecca Hale was on the market. By tomorrow, I'd have offers, good ones, probably. Any firm would want someone who'd nearly closed a $500 million deal. Nearly closed, that was the key word. The contract wasn't signed yet, the champagne remained uncorked, the Wall Street Journal article unwritten, and Section 47B of the contract clearly stated that any change in key personnel required written notification and consent from North Point Resources prior to the contract's execution. I picked up my box and started walking. Not to my car, but to the coffee shop on the corner where I'd held dozens of informal meetings over the years. The same booth in the back was empty, as if waiting for me. I set the box on the worn vinyl seat and pulled out my phone. Madeline answered on the first ring. Rebecca, thank God. What the hell is happening over there? Madeline, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We need to talk about Section 47B. The pause on the other end was long enough for me to signal the waitress for coffee. Black, no sugar. I needed to be sharp for what came next. The key personnel clause. Madeline said slowly, You're listed as essential personnel. I was terminated this morning, effective immediately. Before the signing? 90 minutes ago. Another pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. The same sharp mind that had built North Point's financial framework, calculating the implications. Ethan Ward called me 10 minutes ago, she said. Told me you'd had a family emergency but assured me the signing would proceed as scheduled. He lied to me. Yes, I said simply. He did. The coffee arrived, steam rising from the white ceramic mug. Through the window, I could see the Meridian Tower reaching toward the sky. All that glass reflecting the morning sun. Somewhere up there, Ethan was probably rehearsing his presentation, practicing his handshake, already spending his bonus. Rebecca. Madeline's voice had turned cold, the tone she used when someone tried to alter terms mid-negotiation. I need you to tell me everything. And then we need to discuss what happens when someone violates the terms of our agreement before it's even signed. The coffee shop buzzed with morning rush, but I barely heard it. After ending the call with Madeline, I sat in that booth for an hour, staring at the cooling coffee, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Former colleagues, competitors, headhunters, news of my termination had spread like wildfire through Denver's business community. I ignored them all. There would be time for new opportunities later. Right now, I had a decision to make. I could take the high road, accept the severance, sign the NDA, disappear quietly into another firm. It was the professional thing to do, the safe thing, the thing my father would probably advise. Keep your head down, don't make waves, be grateful for what you have. But I wasn't my father. I hadn't clawed my way out of Ohio to be discarded like this. The apartment I drove to wasn't home. That was a house in Cherry Creek I'd barely seen in the last month. This was a corporate rental in Lodo, walking distance from the office, where I'd spent most nights when deals ran late. It still had that temporary feeling. Beige walls, rented furniture, no personal touches except for a few suits in the closet and a photo of my parents on the nightstand. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself feel it. 7 years, 80-hour weeks. Christmases spent in the office. The relationship with David that ended because I kept canceling dinners. The miscarriage I'd hidden from everyone except HR. Working through the physical pain because the North Point deal couldn't wait. All of it for what? So Ethan Ward could steal my work and climb another rung on his ladder? My laptop, my personal one, sat on the desk where I'd left it 3 days ago. I opened it and began pulling up files. Not Westbridge property, but my own notes, my own research. The relationship map I'd built for North Point, tracking every decision maker, every influence, every pressure point. The analysis I'd done on my own time, understanding their business better than some of their own executives. And there, in a folder labeled Insurance, was the email chain I'd saved from 6 months ago. Ethan, new to the Denver office, trying to muscle in on the North Point deal. His messages to Richardson, the managing partner, suggesting that fresh eyes might benefit the negotiation. Richardson's response, brief but clear. Rebecca has full authority on North Point. Please focus on your own portfolio. But the most damning piece was from just 2 weeks ago, an email Ethan had sent to another EVP, not knowing I'd been copied by mistake. Once the North Point deal closes, Rebecca becomes too valuable to sideline. Need to move before signing, working on justification. I read it 3 times, each word burning itself into my memory. This hadn't been a sudden decision or a reaction to some perceived slight. This had been planned, calculated. He'd waited until the last possible moment, when all the work was done, when the deal was assured, to make his move. My phone rang. Sarah, calling from her personal cell. Jesus, Rebecca, it's chaos here. Ethan's in the boardroom with his team. But Richardson just arrived looking like he's about to have a stroke. Legal's been called in. Something about the contract terms? What time is it? I asked, though I knew exactly. 10:45. The North Point team should arrive in an hour. An hour and 15 minutes until the scheduled signing. I wondered if Ethan had reviewed Section 47B yet. Probably not. He was too busy practicing his victory lap. Sarah, I need you to do something for me. Anything? Check your email, personal account. I sent her the thread with Ethan's premeditation, then added the documentation showing my 18 months of work on North Point. Every meeting note, every strategy session, every relationship I'd cultivated. Holy shit, she breathed after a moment. Rebecca, he planned this. Yes. What are you going to do? I walked to the window, looking out at the city I'd made my home. The skyline I'd learned to navigate like a sailor reads stars. The Meridian Tower stood out, a monument to ambition and betrayal. I'm going to honor the contract terms, I said. Section 47B requires written notification of any changes to key personnel. North Point has the right to approve or reject those changes before signing. They'll reject it, Sarah said immediately. Madeline Cruz doesn't trust anyone else at Westbridge. She barely tolerates Richardson. I know. The silence stretched between us, the weight of what this meant settling in. A $500 million deal, about to evaporate. Westbridge's reputation, about to shatter. Ethan's career, about to implode. Good, Sarah said finally. Burn it down. After we hung up, I sat back at my laptop and began typing. Not an emotional screed or a vindictive rant, but a careful, professional timeline of events. The development of the North Point relationship, the 18 months of cultivation, the sudden termination 90 minutes before signing, the violation of Section 47B. I attached Ethan's email about moving before the signing. Then I added a personal note. Madeline, you once told me you do business with people you trust. I've never forgotten that. I've built my career on relationships, not transactions, because I believe that's what separates good business from great business. This morning, Westbridge Partners violated that trust. Not just with me, but with you. They assumed you were signing a contract with a company, not with the people you'd spent 18 months learning to trust. They were wrong. The choice is yours, but you deserve to know the truth before you sign anything. Rebecca. I hit send at 11:07 a.m., 53 minutes before the scheduled signing. Then I walked back to the window and waited. Somewhere across the city, in a gleaming boardroom 32 floors up, Ethan Ward was about to learn what happened when you forgot that contracts were more than paper. They were promises. And some promises, once broken, could never be repaired. My phone buzzed. Madeline. With just 4 words. Pulling out, call me. I didn't call Madeline right away. Instead, I opened my laptop and began working with the precision of a surgeon. Every document, every email, every piece of evidence needed to be organized, cataloged, ready to deploy. If I was going to war, I needed ammunition. The personal recordings I'd made of key meetings, legal in Colorado as long as one party consents, went into a folder labeled Timeline. The contract drafts, showing my initials on every major revision, went into another. The text messages from North Point executives, thanking me personally for solving various crises over the past year, got their own file. At 11:32 a.m., Sarah texted, "North Point just called. They're not coming. Richardson looks like he's going to vomit. Ethan is screaming at legal." I allowed myself a small smile, then called Madeline. "Rebecca." She answered immediately. "I'm in the car with my team." On speaker. "We were 5 minutes from your building when I got your email. I appreciate you reading it." "Reading it?" Madeline's laugh was sharp. "I'm having legal review every contract we've ever signed with Westbridge. If they'll do this to you, what else have they hidden?" In the background, I could hear voices. North Point's legal counsel, from the sound of it, already discussing breach of contract implications. "Rebecca," Madeline continued, "I need you to understand something. This isn't just about the key personnel clause. You are the reason we chose Westbridge. You understood our vision when everyone else just saw dollar signs. You spent 3 days in our Houston facility, learning our operations from the ground up. Ethan Ward? He couldn't even remember our CEO's name at the last quarterly review. He called him Wilson," I said, remembering. "It's Watson." "Exactly. And now he thinks he can waltz in and take over? Not happening." My phone buzzed with another call. Richardson, the managing partner. I let it go to voicemail. "Madeline, what's your next move?" "First, we're invoking Section 47B. Westbridge materially breached the pre-signing agreement by removing key personnel without notification or consent. Second, my legal team is drafting a formal complaint. Third, and this is where you come in, we want to hire you as an independent consultant to complete the strategic review." I stood up straighter. "You want to hire me directly?" "Why not? You're no longer with Westbridge. Your non-compete, I assume, has geographic and client restrictions but doesn't prevent you from consulting. And we need someone who actually understands our business." The audacity of it was brilliant. Not only would North Point pull the deal, they'd hire me to do the work Westbridge had just lost. The optics would be devastating. "The rate would be competitive," Madeline added. "Let's say 40% of what we were paying Westbridge. 40% of a $500 million contract." I sat down, my legs suddenly unsteady. "That's generous. That's business. Good talent costs money. Besides, you'll actually deliver what you promise, which is more than I can say for your former employer." Richardson was calling again. Then Ethan. Then a number I recognized as Westbridge's general counsel. "They're panicking," I said. "Good. Let them. I have a call with Richardson in 20 minutes. He doesn't know about your email yet, just that we're pulling out due to breach of contract. Should I enlighten him?" I thought about Richardson. He'd been decent to me, mostly. But he'd also chosen Ethan over me when it mattered. He'd signed off on my termination, probably thinking the deal was too far along to fall apart. "Tell him everything," I said. "He should know exactly why his firm is about to lose $500 million. After ending the call with Madeline, I sat in the quiet apartment, my phone lighting up with missed calls and messages. The business news alert started around noon. Bloomberg first, then Reuters. North Point Resources withdraws from $500 million Westbridge partnership. The details were sparse, but the phrase breach of contract appeared in every report. I pulled up Westbridge's stock price, down 8% in 10 minutes. Still falling. My personal email dinged with a message from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You brilliant bitch." It was from Jennifer Martinez, a former Westbridge partner who'd been forced out 2 years ago in a similar power play. Heard what happened, heard what you did. The key personnel clause was genius. Ethan never saw it coming, did he? The boys' club at Westbridge has needed this wake-up call for years. If you need anything, references, introductions, a bottle of champagne to celebrate, call me. By 12:30 p.m., my LinkedIn was flooded with messages. Competitors offering positions. Clients expressing shock. Former colleagues sharing their own war stories. The narrative was already forming. Rebecca Hale, the woman who'd built a $500 million deal, had been pushed out by corporate politics, and Westbridge had paid the price. Sarah called from the bathroom at Westbridge, whispering, "Emergency all hands meeting at 1. Richardson's flying in the board members. Ethan's been locked in with legal for an hour. The word lawsuit keeps getting thrown around." "Are you okay?" I asked. "This might blow back on you." "Are you kidding? Half the office is ready to testify on your behalf if this goes to court. We all know what really happened." I walked back to the window, looking out at the city where I'd rebuilt myself from nothing. 7 years at Westbridge. And it had taken less than 7 hours to destroy what they'd tried to steal from me. But this was just the beginning. Madeline's offer of a consulting contract was generous, but it was also strategic. Every successful project I completed independently would be a reminder of what Westbridge had lost. Every client who followed me would be another nail in Ethan's coffin. My phone rang. "Richardson." This time, I answered. "Rebecca." His voice sounded aged, exhausted. "We need to talk." "No," I said simply. "We don't. You made your choice this morning. Now you get to live with it. This is destroying the firm. The board is talking about cleaning house. Ethan is getting exactly what he deserves. And so are you." I hung up and blocked his number, then Ethan's, then every Westbridge number in my phone except Sarah's. The war was just beginning, but the first battle was already won. The call from Westbridge's legal team came at 2:47 p.m. Not the general counsel, they'd sent their biggest gun. Marcus Fitzgerald from Hayes & Associates, a firm that charged $2,000 an hour to make problems disappear. "Ms. Hale." His voice was smooth as aged whiskey. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding that we can resolve amicably." "There's no misunderstanding. Mr. Fitzgerald, I was terminated. North Point invoked their contractual rights, cause and effect. You contacted North Point directly after your separation. That could be construed as tortious interference." I laughed. Actually laughed. I responded to their direct inquiry about my availability for the signing. "Check the phone records. Madeline Cruz contacted me first. Besides, informing a client of a material contract breach isn't interference. It's transparency. We could make this very expensive for you, Rebecca." "You could try. But discovery would be fascinating, wouldn't it? All those emails, all those internal discussions about the North Point deal. I wonder what else might come to light." The pause told me everything. They knew about Ethan's email planning my termination. They knew their case was weak. "What do you want?" Fitzgerald asked finally. "Nothing from you. I already have what I want." I hung up and immediately called my own lawyer, David Brennan, a friend from Northwestern who'd built his practice on defending corporate whistleblowers. "Rebecca, I've been expecting your call. Half of Denver's legal community is talking about this. You need protection." "What's my exposure?" "Minimal. If what you've told me is accurate, you didn't violate any confidentiality agreements. The key personnel clause is in the contract North Point already had. You didn't solicit them. They contacted you. And if you have proof that Ethan orchestrated your termination to steal the deal," he whistled low, "that's potential wrongful termination, possible fraud. Westbridge should be worried about you suing them, not the other way around." By 4 p.m., the story had evolved. The business press had picked up more details. Sources close to the situation were quoted, probably Madeline's PR team, explaining that North Point had lost confidence in Westbridge's leadership stability. One particularly damaging quote, How can we trust them with our transformation when they can't manage their own team? Sarah texted me photos from inside Westbridge. Empty boxes appearing on desks. Security stationed by the elevators. The Cleveland and New York offices had called emergency meetings. Clients were requesting assurances that their accounts were stable. At 5:15 p.m., Ethan called from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "You destroyed everything," he said without preamble. His voice was raw, desperate. "The firm, my career, everything." "No. Ethan, you destroyed everything the moment you decided to steal what wasn't yours. It was business, nothing personal. You would have done the same. That's where you're wrong. I would have won the deal myself, not waited for someone else to do the work and then stabbed them in the back. The board is calling for my resignation. Richardson threw me under the bus, said I acted without authorization. Legal is recommending they settle with you to avoid a lawsuit." Good. I have a family. Rebecca, kids in private school, a mortgage. So did the 3 senior consultants you laid off last quarter to boost your numbers. I don't remember you losing sleep over their families. This is revenge. No, I said, looking at my reflection in the window. This is consequences. I hung up and blocked that number too. That evening, Madeline flew in from Houston. We met at the Brown Palace Hotel, in a private dining room that had hosted presidents and power brokers for over a century. She'd brought her head of legal and her COO. I brought David Brennan and something more valuable, a detailed transition plan for the North Point engagement. "This is impressive," Madeline said, reviewing my proposal. "You've thought of everything." "I've had 18 months to think about it." "The consulting agreement is ready," her lawyer said, sliding a contract across the table. 6-month initial term, renewable. The rate we discussed, full independence. You work for North Point, not through any firm. I read every line, even though David was doing the same. The number was staggering, more than I'd make in 5 years at Westbridge. But more importantly, it was public validation. North Point was choosing me over one of Denver's most prestigious firms. "There's one more thing," Madeline said. "We want to issue a press release tomorrow, announcing our new strategic consultant, making it clear why we made this choice. That will burn every bridge with Westbridge. They burned that bridge this morning when they lied to me about your termination. I want the market to know that North Point values integrity and relationships over corporate gamesmanship." I signed the contract at 8:43 p.m., almost exactly 12 hours after I'd been escorted from the Meridian Tower. Walking back to my apartment, I felt something I hadn't expected, not satisfaction or vindication, but a strange emptiness. I'd spent 7 years building a career at Westbridge, and in one day, it had all crumbled. Tomorrow, the press release would go out. My name would be tied to Westbridge's humiliation forever. There would be no going back. My phone buzzed with a message from my father. He rarely texted, preferring phone calls. "Saw the news. Don't understand all the business stuff, but sounds like you stood up for yourself. Your mother and I are proud. Come home for dinner Sunday." I stood on the sidewalk, city lights blurring through sudden tears. Not of sadness, but of relief. For the first time in 7 years, I wouldn't spend Sunday in the office. For the first time in 7 years, I was free. Another message came through. This one from Sarah. 3 more people just quit. Junior partners, but still, the exodus has begun. You started something. Rebecca. I looked back at the Meridian Tower, lit up against the night sky. Somewhere up there, the C-suite was in crisis mode, trying to stop the bleeding. Tomorrow would bring more departures, more client defections, more fallout from a single decision to value ambition over loyalty. I hadn't just triggered the key personnel clause, I triggered something much bigger, a reckoning that Westbridge had been avoiding for years. The threat started 3 days after the press release. First, it was subtle. A process server showing up at my apartment with papers that turned out to be a cease and desist letter, claiming I was violating my non-compete. David Brennan laughed when he read it. "They're grasping at straws. Your non-compete specifically excludes independent consulting with pre-existing relationships. Then came the whisper campaign. Former colleagues suddenly couldn't meet for coffee. LinkedIn connections went dark. A speaking engagement at the Denver Business Forum was mysteriously canceled. The message was clear: Westbridge still had reach, and they were using it. But the most unsettling moment came Thursday evening. I was working from my apartment, reviewing North Point's operational data, when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a man I didn't recognize: expensive suit, no delivery uniform, no visible identification. I didn't open the door. "Ms. Hale," he called through the door. "I represent interested parties who'd like to discuss a mutually beneficial resolution." I stayed silent. Phone in hand, David Brennan already on speed dial. The man slipped an envelope under the door and left. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a number: $3 million. Below it, handwritten: "To make this all go away, your career intact, everyone wins." I photographed it and sent it to David. His response was immediate: "That's attempted bribery. Save everything." Friday morning brought a new development. Sarah called, her voice hushed. "Rebecca, I'm sending you something. Check your personal email. Use a VPN." The attachment was a recording from Westbridge's conference room. Sarah had been taking notes in a corner when the senior partners met, and nobody had noticed her phone recording. The audio was clear, Richardson's voice: "The board wants blood. Someone has to take the fall." "Ethan, this was a strategic decision. Your strategic decision cost us $500 million and 3 more clients just this week." Another voice, probably the CFO: "The real problem is the evidence. If Rebecca's lawyer gets those emails in discovery..." "Then we settle," Richardson said. "Quietly. Make her sign an NDA so tight she can't even whisper Westbridge's name." "Ethan, she won't settle. This is personal for her. Everything's for sale. Ethan, we just haven't found her price yet." The recording ended with Richardson's chilling directive: "Apply pressure, legal pressure, social pressure, whatever it takes. She needs to understand that fighting us will cost her more than settling." I forwarded everything to David and Madeline. Within an hour, Madeline had her security team sweep my apartment for surveillance devices. They found nothing, thankfully, and offered to put me up in a corporate suite with better security. I declined. Running would look like fear. Instead, I did something else. I started documenting everything publicly. Not on social media, that would be unprofessional. But I began accepting every interview request from business journalists. I spoke at length to the Denver Post, the Wall Street Journal, anyone who would listen. I was careful to stick to facts, never editorializing, never emotional. Just a clear, clinical dissection of what happens when corporate leadership prioritizes politics over performance. The response was immediate. My inbox flooded with stories from other women, other professionals who'd been pushed out just before their big wins. A partner at a law firm who was terminated the day before making rain on a $100 million client. A sales director fired the week before her team's record quarter posted. Ethan tried to respond with his own PR campaign, but it backfired spectacularly. His interview with Business Insider, where he claimed I was a disgruntled employee spreading misinformation, was fact-checked in real time by journalists who had the receipts, including the email where he'd planned my termination. By Friday afternoon, Westbridge's stock had dropped 22% from Monday's open. The board called an emergency meeting. That evening, I met with someone unexpected: Jennifer Martinez, the former partner who'd reached out after the news broke. We sat in a quiet bar in Lowhigh, away from the downtown crowd. "They did the same thing to me," she said, nursing a whiskey. "Different players, same playbook. I didn't have your foresight with the contract clause, though. I just had to eat it and move on." "Why didn't you fight?" "I did, quietly. Settled for enough to start my own firm. The NDA meant I couldn't say anything publicly." She smiled bitterly. "But NDAs don't prevent me from cheering when someone else tells the truth. They're trying to bury me." Let them try. You've already won the narrative. Every client who's watching knows that Westbridge will throw anyone under the bus for $1. That's a reputation that takes decades to build and moments to destroy. She slid a business card across the table. When you're ready, call me. I'm building something different. A firm where the people who do the work get the credit and the equity, where loyalty runs both directions. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the week's events. In 5 days, I'd gone from terminated employee to the center of a business scandal that was reshaping Denver's corporate landscape. Westbridge was hemorrhaging talent and clients. Ethan was radioactive. No firm would touch him now. Richardson was reportedly negotiating his own exit package. But the most significant message came at 11:47 p.m. from a number I recognized as belonging to the chairman of Westbridge's board, Ms. Barry Hale. The board would like to discuss a resolution that acknowledges mistakes were made and ensures appropriate compensation for all parties. We are prepared to be generous. Please have your attorney contact us at his earliest convenience. William Sterling. Mistakes were made. Passive voice, no admission of responsibility. But they were scared enough to reach out directly, bypassing their legal team's bravado. I screenshot the message and sent it to David with a simple question. What do you think? His response, I think they just blinked. Now we decide whether to negotiate or go for the jugular. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff, a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion, and considered my options. The smart move was to negotiate, take their money, sign their NDA, and move on with my life and Madeline's generous contract. But smart wasn't what had gotten me here. Smart would have been keeping my head down this morning, accepting the termination quietly, being a good soldier. No. They wanted this to go away because the truth was destroying them. And sometimes, the truth was worth more than money. The meeting was set for Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, at David Brennan's law office, neutral ground. William Sterling brought Westbridge's entire crisis team. Marcus Fitzgerald, their outside counsel, Richardson, looking haggard, 2 board members I recognized from annual reports, and, surprisingly, Ethan Ward himself, though he wouldn't make eye contact with me. I brought David, Madeline Cruz, who'd flown in from Houston as my advisory support, and something they didn't expect, a forensic accountant who'd spent the weekend analyzing 18 months of my work on the North Point deal. Let's cut to the chase, Sterling began, his patrician voice steady despite the circumstances. This situation has damaged all parties. We're prepared to offer a substantial settlement to make this right. Marcus Fitzgerald slid a document across the table. $5 million, full release of any non-compete obligations, and a letter of recommendation. I didn't touch the paper. In exchange for? A comprehensive NDA and non-disparagement agreement, all evidence turned over. No further media contact about this matter. You want me to disappear, I said flatly. We want everyone to move forward. Sterling corrected. Madeline spoke for the first time. Gentlemen, are you aware that 3 more Fortune 500 companies have reached out to Rebecca directly after this week's events? They want her specifically because she stood up to you. The forensic accountant opened his laptop. I've analyzed Ms. Hale's contribution to Westbridge's revenue over 7 years, including the deals she sourced, developed, and closed. We're looking at approximately $127 million in direct revenue, with a multiplier effect of roughly $200 million when you factor in follow-on business. He turned the screen toward them. The North Point deal alone would have generated $50 million in fees over the contract term. That's now gone to Ms. Hale's independent practice at, I understand, 40% of your rate? Richardson flinched. Ethan's jaw tightened. Your point? Fitzgerald asked. My point, I said. Finally speaking, is that $5 million is insulting. But more importantly, you're missing the real issue. This isn't about money anymore. I pulled out my phone and showed them my email inbox. 437 messages from Westbridge employees and alumni, all sharing similar stories, all asking if I'll speak up for them too. Sterling's face went pale. That sounds like you're threatening a class action. I'm not threatening anything. I'm showing you that this is bigger than one terminated employee and one lost deal. Your culture is broken, your leadership model is toxic, and everyone knows it now. Ethan finally spoke, his voice bitter. So what do you want? To destroy the firm? I want accountability, I said, looking directly at him. Starting with you. David cleared his throat. My client will consider settling under the following conditions. $10 million. That's the starting point. But more importantly, Ethan Ward's immediate termination for cause, with no severance. A public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. And the establishment of an independent review board for all senior promotions and terminations going forward. Absolutely not, Fitzgerald said immediately. We don't admit wrongdoing, ever. Then we go to trial. David said simply. Discovery will be fascinating. Every email, every text, every recorded conversation about not just Rebecca's termination, but every questionable personnel decision in the last 5 years. The room went silent. I could hear the traffic 30 floors below, the hum of the air conditioning, Richardson's labored breathing. Sterling looked at Ethan, then at Richardson. Something passed between them, a decision made without words. Ethan, Sterling said quietly, I think you should wait outside. What? You can't be serious. Outside. Now. Ethan stood, his face flushed with rage and humiliation. As he passed my chair, he whispered, This isn't over. Yes, I said calmly. It is. After he left, Sterling's demeanor changed. Ms. Hale, let's speak frankly. Ethan Ward is already finished. The board decided that Friday. He'll be terminated with cause by end of business today. Richardson is transitioning to an advisory role, essentially retired. We're bringing in new leadership. And they want a clean slate, Richardson added, his voice defeated. They want this scandal buried before the new team arrives. $12 million, David said. Public acknowledgement that Ms. Hale was wrongfully terminated, and Rebecca gets to review the press release. They huddled, whispered, made phone calls. 40 minutes of negotiation. Of David and Fitzgerald going back and forth on language, on terms, on timing. Finally, Sterling stood. We have a deal. $12 million, structured over 2 years for tax purposes. A joint press release acknowledging that Ms. Hale's termination was handled improperly and that Westbridge takes full responsibility. Ethan Ward's termination effective immediately. And the review board? I asked. We'll commit to an independent HR audit and implementing their recommendations. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. We signed the preliminary agreement at 11:43 a.m. As we gathered our things, Richardson approached me. Rebecca, I should have protected you. I knew what Ethan was, but I thought the deal mattered more than the person who built it. I was wrong. Yes, I said simply. You were. Walking out of that building with David and Madeline, I felt something shift. The weight I'd carried for a week, the anger, the need for revenge, began to lift. You know what the beautiful part is? Madeline said as we reached the street. You didn't just win. You changed things. Westbridge will never be the same. Neither will any firm that heard this story. That afternoon, the news broke. Westbridge Partners settles wrongful termination claim, announces leadership changes. Ethan Ward's name appeared in paragraph 3. Terminated for cause following internal review. My phone exploded with messages. Job offers, partnership opportunities, congratulations from people I'd never met. But the message that mattered most came from Sarah. They just announced it internally. Ethan escorted out by security. Richardson gone by Friday. New CEO coming from outside. You did it. You actually did it. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of champagne, the bottle I'd saved for the North Point signing, now repurposed for a different kind of victory. The city lights sparkled below, the Meridian Tower standing tall among them. Tomorrow, I'd start my consulting work with North Point properly, Next week, I'd consider Jennifer Martinez's offer to join her firm as a founding partner. Next month, I'd finally take that vacation I'd been postponing for 7 years. But tonight, I simply sat with the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, when you refuse to accept injustice, when you stand your ground even when the odds are against you, you can trigger more than just a contract clause. You can trigger change. 6 months later, I sat in a different coffee shop, not the one on the corner near Meridian Tower, but a quiet place in Cherry Creek where no one talked about mergers or market share. The morning news played on a mounted TV, muted, with subtitles crawling across the bottom. Westbridge Partners reports, third consecutive quarter of losses. Below that, smaller text, firm struggles to rebuild after mass exodus of senior talent. I didn't smile. There was no satisfaction left in watching them crumble. The anger that had fueled me through those first weeks had long since cooled into something else. Indifference, perhaps. Or maybe just peace. My phone buzzed. Madeline, texting from Houston. Phase 1 complete. Board approved Phase 2. You ready for another 18 months? The North Point project had exceeded every projection. Without Westbridge's bureaucracy and politics, we'd accomplished in 6 months what would have taken them a year. My consulting firm, yes, my own firm now, with Jennifer Martinez as partner, had grown to 12 employees. We were turning down clients. The coffee shop door chimed, and Ethan Ward walked in. I hadn't seen him since that conference room 6 months ago. He looked different, older, definitely, but something else too. The aggressive confidence was gone, replaced by something I recognized from my own mirror 6 months ago. The look of someone who'd lost everything and was trying to figure out what came next. He saw me, hesitated, then approached. Rebecca. Ethan. May I? He gestured to the empty chair across from me. I nodded, curious more than anything. I heard about your new firm. Congratulations. Thank you. He ordered coffee, black, and we sat in silence for a moment. The TV continued its silent broadcast. Another headline scrolled by. Former Westbridge executive Ethan Ward's new venture fails to secure funding. He saw it too. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I owe you an apology, he said finally. Not for the business decision. In my mind, that was just strategy. But for making it personal. For thinking I could erase your work and claim it as mine. You owe me nothing, I said. We're even. No. We're not. You won. Completely. I set down my coffee cup, considering my words carefully. Ethan, I didn't win. I survived. There's a difference. You destroyed Westbridge. Westbridge destroyed itself. I just refused to be collateral damage. He laughed, bitter and short. The key personnel clause. I must have read that contract a dozen times and never noticed it. You never noticed because you never thought the people mattered, just the numbers. We sat in silence again. Around us, the coffee shop hummed with normal life. People working on laptops, friends catching up, a mother teaching her toddler to count using sugar packets. None of them knew they were sitting near the epicenter of Denver's biggest corporate scandal of the year. What are you going to do now? I asked, surprising myself with the question. I don't know. Nobody will hire me. My reputation is. He gestured vaguely. You made sure of that. You made sure of that, I corrected. I just made sure everyone knew about it. He stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Rebecca, you were the best strategic mind Westbridge ever had. I knew it. Richardson knew it. That's why I had to remove you. You were too good to compete with fairly. It was the closest thing to a compliment he'd ever given me. It was also the saddest thing I'd ever heard him say. Ethan, I called as he reached the door. He turned. Start over, somewhere else, maybe. Different industry. And this time, try building something instead of taking it. He nodded and left. I finished my coffee and walked back to my office, not in a towering monument to corporate ego, but in a converted warehouse in Reno. All exposed brick and natural light. My team was already there, working on 3 different client projects. Sarah, who joined us the day after her non-compete expired, waved from her desk. Jennifer was on a call with a potential client, her voice confident and clear. On my desk was a package, inside, a photo in a simple frame, the Westbridge senior team from 2 years ago, before Ethan arrived, before everything went wrong. Someone had sent it with a note. Remember the good times too. Richardson. I looked at it for a long moment. That woman in the photo, standing proudly in her first designer suit, believing that loyalty and hard work would be enough. I barely recognized her. She thought success meant climbing someone else's ladder. She thought power meant a corner office and a 7-figure deal. She'd been wrong about so much. But she'd been right about one thing: the importance of knowing your worth and defending it. I placed the photo in my drawer. Not displayed, but not discarded either. A reminder of where I'd been, and why I'd never go back. My computer pinged with a new email. Another potential client, another company that had heard about the woman who'd brought down Westbridge with a single contract clause. Another chance to build something real. I sat down at my desk, looking out at the Denver skyline. The Meridian Tower was still there, still gleaming in the morning sun, but it no longer dominated my view. It was just another building now, full of people making deals, playing politics, forgetting that business is ultimately about trust. And trust, once broken, could never be fully repaired, only replaced with something stronger. I opened the email and began typing my response. There was work to do, real work, the kind that built careers and companies and relationships that lasted, the kind that no one could ever take away. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Rebecca's situation? Let's discuss in the comments.